Good afternoon. Oh my God. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Corey Rosen, and you're listening to the Story Podcast. Today we have on a super awesome returning guest for the third time now. Circumstantial Saint is a native of Pennsylvania, having lived all over the state. He calls himself a poet, a musician who likes to work from affirmation, duality, spirituality, social justice, and awareness. He seeks to elevate the collective consciousness through his words and stories. He has over a dozen albums, which he sees as books that reflect different ideas of darkness, depression, acceptance, and self care. He's dropping a new album in July called Remember My Name, which has elements of rap, house, techno, and neo soul. You also produce all your music yourself.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So how you been? It's been almost a year.
Yeah. I've been great, just hibernating, working on my craft, building, seeking to grow as an artist all around.
Sure. So last time we had you on, the upcoming album was Speak to Heal.
hmm
And now you're coming up with a new album, Remember My Name. Tell me about the differences between the two.
Well, I just dropped an album in January, which is kind of like an intermediary period, really diving into um, my house sound
Mm.
and really growing on that. So this new album, Remember My Name, uh, is different from I Speak to Heal in the sense where it's a little more lighter on sound, deeper in house, and deeper in context of what I'm talking about. I Speak to Heal really was about the throat chakra and speaking up, speaking out, sharing my thoughts in that sense. And this new album that I'm going to be releasing is a combination of all the different things that I think that I represent, whether it's talking about social issues, whether it's talking about love or relationships or deep introspection, which I think that with my previous pieces of work have tended to be themed with all those ideas, but not all wrapped into one.
Mm.
So I'm learning how to take every different era that I've went through and putting it kind of into one piece now.
So is your writing process kind of similar, or what does that look like?
Excuse me. So my writing process varies from poem to poem to track, piece to piece, because sometimes I'm always making beats. Every day I'm making a beat. And sometimes the beat will speak to me and words will come from that beat. And then other times I'm just writing poetry. When I write poetry, there's no there's no sound that I'm trying to encompass beat wise. I'm just writing out my flow and my thoughts about something. And when I feel like I have something special with those words, then I'll throw it on a beat that I've produced and kind of get an idea for what sounds right. And then I'll go back and fit the beat to those words. So that's usually how I come up with the song in its entirety. But as far as lyrics go, it varies. Sometimes I'm just writing poetry. Other times I actually am taking a beat and fitting words to it, especially jumping into deep house. I've relied less on the context of what I'm saying and being more uh, remixing my words and my poetry. So it has a different layer to it. I'm adding to what I'm saying. It's not just a poem on beats anymore. It's an interconnected, woven piece. And like for this past album, The Passion Life, it's 8 tracks, very short and very interlude like, but there's 3 songs that are heavy on the poetry, and everything else, even in those songs, it's a lot of DJ cut and
Mm.
remixing. So I've really got into having fun with that and really enjoying it. Yeah.
Nice. So that album was a Passion Life, you said?
The Passion Life,
The
yes.
Passion Life, and that just you said came out in January.
Yeah, I released it on my birthday, January 16th.
Oh, nice.
Yeah,
And
little
so,
gift.
what was that project about?
So the passion life actually is I wanted to dive deeper into my topics of social justice, a distaste for our corruptive government, and letting people know that they have a voice and they can stand up for themselves and fight against what they think may be wrong or immoral. And so the album is very, very, very heavy on the remixing so that it's less about me speaking directly about this issue or that issue. It's very veiled. It's very abstract. And the sound, the house beats really push the message. So if you look at the song titles, there's a message there within the song titles that you just kind of have to decipher. And if you listen deeply to background sounds or words, there's other messages that I've put in the album. So I wanted to be a little more cryptic with how I approached a particular message on that album, and I'm very. It was very fun to do. It was also a big like a big release for me in a way that I wasn't able to do with other pieces because there were other things that I was trying to do with those pieces. So this was something that was very intentional and also in a creative sense. I had a lot of fun with it.
Nice.
Yeah.
What do you think draws you to? You're talking about house a lot. What do you think draws you to house and those kind of beats?
Yeah, so I grew up with a family that is heavy into music and definitely inspired a lot of my tastes. As maybe being a part of the queer community, I always gravitated towards early 90s house music.
Is
Um,
that a thing?
yes,
Really?
Vogue music, house music, Baltimore club, Jersey club music, Philly party music, and deep New York house were sounds that I grew up listening to on the radio, especially on the weekends. And it deeply was deeply ingrained into my spirit. What makes me tick, what makes me groove the most would be house music, and it's something about it that I find soulful, that really digs deep into my soul to help me be a little more in touch with feeling in general. And also being brought up on neo soul very heavily, growing up in Coatesville initially. My adolescence, I grew up in Coatesville, which is not far from Philly, and Philly was like the epitome of neo soul in the late 90s, early 2000s. So that definitely shaped a big part of how I injected into my house music because although I love like deep house and like big sounds, I also love having a calm, uh, deep soulfulness to my house music as well. And I think combining those really does tug at how I was inspired early on as a kid.
Seems like that would be a hard combination to make. It, a bump and bass
Mhm,
and like a slow R&B kind of track.
mhm.
That sounds like a challenge.
Uh, you know, at first, I won't say it was ever a challenge for me, but I will say at first I kind of felt like I had to separate it. Like each track had to be a different sound. And as I
Mm,
went along, it just kind of naturally blended. And so now it's all about deeper, like crafting that feature about myself deeper. And I've learned that being uh, I really take pride in being different and crafting my own path. So I don't really look to what's hip, what's popular, what people are necessarily doing with their own music, although I do listen to certain things and I love certain sounds. So there are certain things that I do appreciate and try and see if like there's something from what I'm hearing as far as like, for example, like drill beats or trap beats that I do play around with that I enjoy for myself, but I'm not doing it because it's popular.
sure. Well, to be quite honest, that whole music scene in that area, the whole house stuff. I had no idea about it. That's not my cup of tea.
No,
But
I think everyone has their different tastes, and house music is one of those things where you love it or you don't.
well, it's also the fact that I don't really know what I'm looking for in terms of house. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like I could, if you were to tell me how to describe a house, all I could tell you was that it was like a four on the floor beat, and it's almost that German club kind of thing, or like boot boot
Uh-huh.
boot boot boot, and it, you know. But besides that, okay.
Oh man, and that's the thing. If you're not into house music, you don't realize that there's this whole big world, and there's so many different subgenres of house music. It's insane. And so it's like if you're a fan of house music, it's like being a kid in a candy store. Because I mean, you have your Afro house, you have your Euro house, you have your soulful house, you have your there's so many different kinds of house music, whether it's like urban or whether it's more like rave. Me personally, I love it all, but there are lots of people that just have their particular different, I know lots of DJs that are only doing Jersey club music, which has been around for 20, 30 years, but it's now becoming like a mainstream popular thing in tandem with like trap music. So like I see like people infusing it into trap music to have some kind of difference. Because one thing I will say, I personally feel that like the popular trap music and drill music of today is very redundant. Everything sounds the same.
But that happens with every single thing that's like played on the radio.
Now that's true. That is true. Every genre right now, especially mainstream, everyone's sounding the same. Everyone wants to sound the same to
By
follow a
design.
certain. What's that?
By design.
Yes, I completely agree with that. And I think that was part of the inspiration of my past album, The Passion Life, was trying to tell people like, don't follow don't follow everyone else. Like look to be something different so that you can help inspire other people in the world to be different as well.
Absolutely. Besides, who wants to be the next whoever, right? You be the next you, right? I'm not going to be the next Taylor Swift. No one can Taylor Swift better than Taylor Swift. You know what I mean?
That
part. I'll be the next Corey Rosen. I'll be the Corey Rosen.
That's right.
I know there's a few others, but forget about them. So, in your past album, you mentioned a throat chakra. I know you have focused albums on different chakras. Are you continuing with that, or is that?
I am. It's something that I intend to have all throughout my career, whether it's keeping up with the whole I am moniker, which I'm still going to continue to do.
I really like that.
Thank you. And keeping up with the rest of the chakras, I will continue to do. However, right now, I am taking the chance to expand and just kind of like broaden out and expand my wings and find other means of getting not getting people into spirituality, but getting them to just be more introspective and do shadow work and find ways to inject mantras and repetitions of meditative aspects of life to get you to be a better person and add to this world and more varied ways other than the way that I was doing it with the chakras and the I am monikers and all of that. So I'm still doing it. But right now, I want to find other ways to get through to people, maybe in more subliminal ways.
Well, hey, I see a few people watching at the Urban Conservative. If you guys have any questions for Circumstantial Saint, be sure to drop them in the comments. I do want to get around to some of your music because we have a little bit of it.
Awesome.
We have 7 Doors of Now. Tell me about that one.
So I'm also I've been working on this album for almost a year now. It's called New Jack City, and that's like a whole conceptual album about a whole world, right? So the song actually originates from that album, but I wanted to do something different and put it on this album because it fit in with the message I was trying to portray. So it talks about different aspects of a person and which route are you going to go down, which of these personalities is you, and how well are you putting out the best of yourself or just your raw self to the world? What is your dominant side, and what are the other doors that you don't speak of enough, or that you don't acknowledge or don't even know?
Let's take a listen to Seven Doors of Now. I know last time we talked about getting into BLM and the corruption and stuff. You want to do that?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
That was one thing I was really excited for, actually.
Yes, same.
Might be skipping here, but I won't be skipping.
Yeah.
Now you guys get to see behind the scenes. Yeah.
Right.
We just talk shit about everybody.
Let's go, yeah.
So I've seen a little bit of the Urban Conservative. Is it a podcast? It's like.
So he has a podcast. He's also a spoken word poet. I produced all his albums, all his music. But he's also a correspondent on my news network.
Yeah.
So he's kind of like a whole brand. Yeah, awesome guy. We've collaborated a lot. We actually released a duo album at the end of last year called Urban Circumstances. So it's just us two on, collaborating on songs and solo songs, kind of like I don't know who has duo albums, like Lady Gaga and what's his name? Tony Bennett. There's so many different people that have done collaborative efforts, and we had collaborated so much before we say, let's just do this. Dope artist, yeah.
What's the podcast about?
So
I think I listened to it, but I couldn't quite understand exactly what it is.
He's like someone that talks about urban issues that affect mostly Black people, but just people in general. He says he's an urban conservative because he's very hardline against Democrats, and holds them accountable. Not that he doesn't hold Republicans accountable either, but his thing is policy over politics and really.
Oh, absolutely. Okay, that's great. Because I was listening to it. I was like, this is really interesting stuff. I myself I identify as conservative, actually, and that surprises a lot of people. considering what we all talk about.
Right.
But it was interesting to me because I think a lot of Democrats don't like to hold themselves accountable. I can say the same thing with Republicans. It's both sides issue, right? But I think a lot of Democrats just are anybody that's in. Oh yeah, but it's also just like, oh, they're Democrat, okay. They're Republican, oh okay. It's not who,
right?
Yeah.
And I think a lot of us are not informed.
Yeah. They're misinformed.
Yeah.
Because the news doesn't want to tell news; they want to sell profits.
That's why I have my network.
Oh, and we're back. So we're gonna get into some maybe controversial topics.
Yeah.
You run the Leon Block Institute. Tell me what that is about, and then we'll get into what we'll talk about.
So 4 years ago, about off the back of the pandemic, being stuck in the home a lot,
and then that was 4 years ago, wasn't it?
Yeah. It's March, so
yeah, right. March 13th was the day it happened.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We're coming up on 4 years, people. It's time flies, but George Floyd, the whole situation in May, I took to the streets, and between March and May, I said I was going to start a podcast initially, and it just kind of ballooned into, educating the world on what's going on, social justice issues, climate change, all different kinds of issues that affect us directly, and kind of just informing people on things that the mainstream media is not. So over the past few years, it has expanded to not just being in Lancaster where I was based, but across the nation, speaking out on things as far away as Minneapolis, Minnesota, and Mississippi, Florida, Ohio especially. So it has become a lifelong duty for me at this point to continue to do it. And some people find it redundant because there's so many different podcasters and independent news sources out there now, but we desperately need it when there are what's called.
So we were just muted for a little while. Thank
Oh,
you,
man.
Urban Conservative.
Thank you.
Oh, dude, that is something I haven't done that in a hot second. I am so sorry.
Oh,
So,
no, you're good.
Well, we'll get back into it. What is the Leon Block Institute?
So the Leon Block Network happens to be, we have podcasts, we have web shows, a numerous amount of web shows that we broadcast all across social media in general. We have music that we also, like myself and the Urban Conservative, that we do feature on our network if it is called for it. So like,
sure, right. Example,
we just released an EP. I just released an EP last month for Black History Month. So, and I do a lot of different pieces, but for different things. The Leon Block Network started in 2020 off the back of George Floyd and the pandemic, and really wanting to contribute to combating the propaganda, the narratives, and the misinformation that mainstream media puts out. And so over the past few years, it's ballooned to us having podcasts, web shows across all social media. And shout out to my partner in crime, the Urban Conservative, for being an instrumental piece in making the network what it is and being a driving force for it. It has become a lifelong duty, and some people find it redundant that there are so many different independent media outlets out there, but we desperately need it. Especially over the past few years, we have seen numerous news deserts, especially in America, pop up to where there's counties and counties of whole swaths of land in America that have no news. They have no news station. They have no newspaper.
The local news is dying out, and it's all mainstream media.
Exactly. There's accounts of, rural Kentucky and meth labs, for example, and corruption in the local governments from city council members embezzling millions of dollars, and that news doesn't get out. People in that own area are not informed about what's going on in their communities. And so we need as many small independent media news sources as possible. I don't care if someone just grabs a little tiny mic they got on Temu and is spitting what they found on social media in their bedrooms. It's still important. And so it's something that I do take very seriously. And I think that kind of spilled over into my poetry and my music and finding another route to touch people and inform people and inspire people that may be separate or different from the way that other people are taking it in through the media.
So here's where the controversy kicks in. Mm-hmm. BLM got caught in a massive corruption scandal. Mm-hmm. What were your thoughts on that when that came to light?
So it's important that as independent media, we shed light on things that are going on, be factual and true. So the difference is, right? We've had a conversation about this actually, where Black Lives Matter movement is something I will always support. I will always support the
raising up the voices
and the embetterment of all people, of all races, but especially Black people, foundational descendants of enslaved African Americans in America is what I will always be fighting for. However, if we're going to go forward, we also have to hold ourselves accountable. And that's all of us, whether it's white people, whether it's Black people, indigenous people. We all have to hold ourselves accountable and be real with ourselves before we go accusing anybody else about what has been done to us, right? So with the BLM Foundation and organizations, especially like Black Lives Matter LA, yes, they embezzled money. They are corrupt. They did horrible things. I don't support them. It's wrong. And for us specifically on our network, we did an entire campaign to expose what happened and be very truthful and forthcoming about it. Now, the BLM organizations and the BLM movement are two separate
different things. Yeah.
A lot of people like to throw them together and slander what the movement was about, and that is wrong. It is not factual, and I think that people need to understand that these two things are separate and can be separate.
And a lot of people would say Oh, I support the movement, but not the organization, and people forget to like separate the two. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
There's the whole movement, and then there's the whole organization. And
Right.
organizations can easily get corrupted and
Yes.
easily be embezzling money like they did, and not actually further their agenda, which was to state that they want to help urban Black minorities, and they did not do that.
Mhm.
They were enriching themselves
Yes.
and lobbying
Talk
politicians.
about it.
It was so insane to me when
And
that
it's
came
still
out,
going on.
and it's still going
And
on.
we're calling these people out because if we're to have any progression, you've got Republicans and Democrats looking at us like, well, you just are a bunch of rowdy people that's just embezzling money. That's not all of us. It's a small pocket of people that take
At the
advantage.
top,
Yes,
yeah,
exactly. I mean, there's people at the bottom too,
sure,
but
but
essentially they're mirroring the society that they're in. So you've got people at the top setting the
the standard,
precedent,
right?
right? So I'm not excusing it, I'm not condoning it, but we do need to address these things so that people know what they should actually be doing or what they can do.
Yeah, and also with the whole entire thing, it's such a travesty because now the support for the movement itself is now below.
Delegitimized, right?
It's been delegitimized, and anytime oh we're gonna do a Black Lives Matter protest or whatever, it's no longer meaningful. In fact, it's at one point I think in 2019 or no, this is incorrect. In 2020 and 2021, that's when it got peak
Mhm.
approval of
Mhm.
population approval.
Yep.
It was at like 60-some%,
Yep.
and now it's like in the 40s and 30s
Mhm.
because of all the stuff that they've done, and it's just tragedy.
I saw this coming, and
I'm sure a lot of people did.
yeah, for me personally, it's important that I stay firm and steadfast in what I do and the
Mm.
work that I do. Because there could be tons of people around you, organizations, and even grassroots campaigns
It seemed grassroots.
that are still actually very corrupt and
Yeah.
doing some messed up things. And so even though on my network I'm calling it out as we should be and informing people of what's going on around us, I personally have to keep focused on how do we get this information out to people in a way that they're actually taking in and understanding what's going on. And that can be challenging at times. Uh, my good brother, the urban conservative, likes to speak about urban issues in a way that can wake people up. And so he's very big on holding, especially urban Democrat politicians, accountable for contributing to the stagnation of us getting the things that we actually deserve as people in urban communities, especially. And so he considers himself a conservative in the sense that he wants to get back to over the past several decades, the traditional Black family has underwent a very significant change that affects us. Lots of Black people have grown up without
Two parents,
parents in the household, and there's a
typically a
lot of
fatherless.
right, and that does create a lot of different effects. People can say what they want, but the facts are there.
The
The
studies are
statistics
there.
exactly
It is
for
overwhelmingly that
exactly
they need at least a two parent. Not really. That doesn't matter what gender.
right,
Just two people,
mhm,
typically different personality traits, right?
right,
To say to give them their emotional support, but also discipline
mhm,
and stuff like that, because it's lacking.
yeah,
And one parent, this is going to offend some people.
right.
One parent can't do it all.
Took the words out of my mouth. I agree. I was raised by a single mother. However, I had a whole greater extended family that pitched in and helped.
Sure.
So they kind of filled in that void. However, I understand and have looked at the studies and statistics to understand how I personally have been affected by not having a father in the
The father
household
figure,
to
yeah.
exactly. And so these are things that send ripple effects through whole communities. And so if we're to get past that, we have to address where we are, what led us here, and that entails speaking out to our own community for the things that they're contributing to get us in this mess.
So I could go on a whole
Right.
rant
Mhm.
about all the policies, the tax benefits that you get as a single mother,
Mhm.
and et
Yep.
cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and
Yes.
all the stuff that you can, that advocates for the breaking up of the nuclear family.
Yes.
Not only just the black family,
Yes.
but the nuclear family as a whole, whether you're white, whatever.
I think people get so agitated, especially like liberals and progressives, that hear that kind of thing and go, "Oh, well, what about people that don't have a gender or people that don't follow the typical nuclear family?" And well,
That's
I still look at things in a sense of energy. There
right.
still needs to be some masculine and feminine energy in that mix. There has to be left brain and right brain
Sure.
thinking. And that's the way that people can look at it if you want to focus on the semantics of that aspect. But let's face it, it takes a village. And in the Black community, we all have been disenfranchised from one another in a sense where we're not really a tight-knit community like we were prior to World War II. And so,
oh my god, the stories of like Black Wall Street and stuff like that.
exactly.
Back, was it Oklahoma?
Yes,
Yeah,
Tulsa.
Tulsa. Yeah.
Mhm.
And just the way that the black family was improving, was getting actually some power into them, and then it just all falls apart with the reconstructionism and
There's something that was said about like, okay, people segregation was, I feel, wrong. However, I feel as though it shouldn't have been the nation by law forcing white people to accept Black people and just be with us. I think that we needed a gradual social change to bring that about. And so,
not forced.
right. And so it also, in turn, for Black people, disenfranchised us. Instead of going to support your local butcher and your local repair shop in your own Black community, you went to the other shops that were run by white people, but because you wanted to be a part of integration. And I'm not saying that integration is a wrong thing. We needed integration, but I think it should have been more gradual and natural
willing.
for us to be willing.
Volunteer.
I think that is what would have helped to eradicate racism more so, as opposed to just forcing people to say, you can't be racist. Well, that's why we have covert and overt racism today.
It's crazy to me because there are some arguments from the liberal progressives that we should bring segregation back.
Hmm.
Have you heard those?
No, but okay, so my thing is, I don't have an issue with any race or ethnic group that wants to stay to themselves as long as you're not hurting or harming anyone else. There are excuse me, there are many countries that are very homogenous societies. You've got Japan, China, Sweden, yes, Norway. There's so many different countries.
So much more racist than America.
That part, but I also feel like it's not necessarily racism; it's lack of knowledge and being exposure. And so, where does that start and begin? I think that we in America harp too much on that, instead of actually doing what we can to naturally eradicate things by having intense, deep, maybe conflicting viewpoints, but we need to have tough conversations.
Sure.
And yeah, the civil rights movement disenfranchised Black people by far and large. And I think that's what contributed to us in present day having very large obstacles in ever attaining something like Black Wall Street sense of community ever again. Yeah. Yes. And so this is why it's so important to have independent media, and especially someone like me, a person of color, a Black person, a foundational Black person, talking about important things, important issues that are not just informing Black people, but also white people, Latinx people, indigenous people, Asian people, about what goes on in our communities, because it's building bridges, it's creating dialogue. And so again, shout out to my brother, the Urban Conservative, for touching on viewpoints and narratives that can be seen as taboo or controversial, but he does not back down from that.
Yeah, and I feel like that's what a lot of people need to start doing, is because there is an apparatus that will push back hard on you and try to keep you quiet and silenced. But it doesn't matter. Most Americans believe the same thing, whether or not the media likes to portray that.
Agreed.
And there's a very loud minority that says, no, all Americans are different. It's only this way. No.
Speaking of like that and talking about the upcoming election, Uh,
It's gonna get interesting.
right. I'm not Republican and I'm not Democrat. So people go, well, what are you? Are you libertarian? What does it matter? Why do we only have these two major parties? I think the majority of Americans don't necessarily associate with one or the other. I think that most people are a little more in the middle.
It is the middle.
And so all
Yeah.
of these people are completely disenfranchised because there is no one that speaks to them for them. And that is the major problem. I myself are when I start opening up and speaking to people about my own personal ideals and what I want for the world, and um, 99.9% of what I'm talking about, people feel the same way. And so, coming to this election, I don't like the things that Trump and Biden stand for and what they're saying, what they want. Uh, I'm looking at the smaller candidates that are making some noise because we're at a point in American history that
But there's a change. There's a chance for change.
yes, and it doesn't matter what side of the aisle you're on. I think there are more things that unite us and that we can agree on.
Separate us.
Exactly, and
Absolutely.
it's the two-party system that's actually separating us. So that is something that again, to my music, I try to speak to in subliminal ways, even if it's talking about spirituality, so to speak. There's still a way that I try to inject talking about policy and not necessarily politics, but it's still everything's politics.
You're not wrong. The urban conservative just said the masses are controlled by a certain few, so we can only consume what they choose for us and
Exactly.
to see and learn from. Yeah, no. When you see that like 90% of all news outlets are owned by only 6 companies in the U.S., and once you get into that whole conspiracy bubble of how much food is owned by so few companies, how much, dude,
How much
you
land
know
is
what
getting
pisses
bought
me
up.
off so much?
Yeah.
So Michelle Obama had the whole campaign for getting rid of sugar and moving, right?
Yeah.
And that ended up destroying her lunches, not because it was a bad idea, but because the sugar companies lobbied against her and said, "Hey, look, you can't do that. You're going to get rid of this percent of margin of our stuff." And we, it's just politics. It's just
Yep.
politics blackmail. And as soon as that happened, it went from no sugar to just move around, and then it have the National Day of Play, right?
Right.
And it pisses me off so much because, like, I don't want to get too deep into this. Maybe I can come on the Urban Conservative podcast and just rant.
Oh, yes. I'm sure he would love to have you on. These are the kind of things that we love to cover, and with ordinary people and people that do a number of different things, because we need more people to speak up about their actual thoughts about this country if we are to get anywhere.
Right?
And push back against the direction that the 1% and the politicians or so-called leaders of our country are trying to navigate us to. I think that we all are disoriented and find. I was just talking with my roommate on the way here about the price of food increasing from 2019. I think it's increased like 40%.
Possibly more.
That is
what they don't tell you.
Exactly. That is ridiculous. We were talking about $20 McDonald's combos.
Dude, I was looking at those like, no, this ain't the dollar menu no more.
Nope. It's cheaper to go to Red Robin and get a combo than it is to go to McDonald's.
I know.
What is going on
ridiculous?
in this country?
It's cheaper to go to. It's almost cheaper to go to Applebee's.
Yes. So these are things that unite us versus being Republican or Democrat.
Right. It's food.
Right. It doesn't matter if you live in a city or you live in a very rural area, you are still feeling the crunch when it comes to food. You are still feeling the crunch when it comes to housing. You are still feeling the crunch when it comes to land, to farming. Farming, it has to do with food. All these things are interconnected.
On, like the Ohio Palestine.
And
Palestine, Ohio, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And how that nothing was done, and how all the crops were affected, and many cattle, mm-hmm. chickens died.
And this happens more frequently than people like to think. That happened to be a major news story.
Right.
But just last week, outside of Allentown, in Easton, Pennsylvania, here in Pennsylvania, there was another train that derailed. Coming up on I think it was a year anniversary of the Norfolk Southern situation in East Palestine. So we are not talking about enough. The mainstream media, I should say, is not talking about the things that we need to be talking about to help fix this country.
No, I think, God, it makes me so mad that they're so busy focused on other countries and more than ourselves.
Right.
And I understand that there's a whole thing going on in Ukraine, there's a whole thing going on in Israel Palestine, but if we can't shore up our own people, like the border crisis, for example,
Right.
they're giving out luxury apartments, $2,000 credit cards to these,
and we have tons of homeless.
And we have tons of homeless people and veterans.
And we have enough homes empty to fill.
Dude,
all
oh
these
my God.
People.
It pisses me off.
We're spending our tax-paying dollars, and I'm not
$250 billion to Ukraine.
I'm not opposed to people that are fleeing stuff that we've caused in other countries to come here. Let me say that. However, we've got people here
that need our help first.
Exactly. And I think with looking at the wars in Ukraine and the genocide happening in Palestine, we don't, and this goes in hand with the immigration thing, because we don't want our tax-paying dollars going to frivolous things that need to go to us. Feeding our people, bringing the inflation down. Well, it's going down, but the corporations are still.
Well, you stop printing money.
That part too.
Just stop printing.
Talk about it.
I would love to abolish the Federal Reserve.
Yes.
The IRS.
Yes.
And there's so many things I'd love to abolish. And you know what's really funny? Thomas Massey, do you know that
I know the name.
He's a Republican, not senator, House member from Kentucky.
Okay.
But he snuck in to a vote to abolish, I think it was the DOE, and it almost passed. Yeah, right. You snuck it in there. You know, you have like these $1,000 paper
documents.
Things.
They don't have the time to read through it. They have someone that just give them the cliff notes of what's going on, and they say you need to say yes or no. It's like, this is why we're in such a train wreck. No pun intended on Norfolk Southern, but train wrecks in our country.
No, I could literally go on and on about this.
And I think this is also why people are so fed up about. Yes, again, we cover things in Palestine all day, every day, and exactly, and I find it so important to talk about, because why are we sending billions of dollars to bomb other people, and we're sitting here struggling ourselves, and you're robbing us blind of money to go kill other people for your own interests? It has nothing to do with everyday Americans. Yet us everyday Americans are suffering. We're losing our homes. We're losing our dignity. We're losing property. We're not able to pay rent. People are sleeping in cars and hotels. There are strips here in Lancaster along Lincoln Highway. There's strips of hotels with whole families living in, with kids that get picked up on the bus and go to school from from hotels. And this is not just something in Lancaster. It's all across the country. And again, yet we've got in New York City, immigrants being put up in luxury hotels and given stipends for food, 3 meals a day. Excuse me.
And then all the crime that comes with that too. There's been, what was it, Lincoln Riley that just got raped and murdered by an illegal immigrant? And
again, there's two sides to the story.
There is two sides to the story.
You have lots of immigrants that are coming here that are not dangerous.
That are not dangerous,
just want a good living. They want dignity. They want to work. They want jobs, right? But it's our government that is enabling the crime and all of these bad things that are happening too.
Right.
By just giving people stipends and letting people do whatever they want.
And giving them incentives for more to come over,
right? Which
then decreases our wages because it's cheaper to hire them than it is Americans.
That too. If you speak to these immigrants, they're being told that there's opportunity here to come to America. Well, when they come here, they're in for a big shock.
They are.
My thing is though, like it really grinds my gears when you're having a tent city on an island in New York for tons of immigrants to get 3 meals a day, when there are homeless Americans in Central Park
New Yorkers
that are begging for a meal and doing all kinds of crazy messed up things so that they can even just get one scrap of something.
You look at Kensington Square. And it's like, oh my God.
Yes.
It's the third world country in Philadelphia.
Yep. So, and again, Philadelphia in itself, let's go there, is a whole city. It's one of the poorest major cities in America. That needs our help. predominantly a Black and poor white population, that and increasingly immigrant population now as well, that need our help. And we're just flaunting money around to all these different places and all these different aspects to our military. And we're being told that we don't have money for us, for things that actually
we don't have $5 billion to go to the border or to any of these other towns, but we have $250 billion to go to Ukraine.
Right. And no money for Social Security.
No money for Social Security, no money for healthcare, no money for nothing. But we have $1 billion trillion for anywhere else that wants our money.
And so when I listen to President Biden's State of the Union the other day,
it was really funny, wasn't it?
Yes, I couldn't help but laugh. I couldn't help but say, what are we doing, America? And I think it doesn't matter what you associate with. And I think people are less associating with Democrat or Republican at this point and just saying, I'm conservative. I have more progressive values. I don't like even associating with liberal or even saying the word liberal anymore. But liberal values, I can kind of say. But my thing is, people are really seeing through the smoke screen of the redundancy, of the fallacy, of the phoniness and the corruption of all politicians, doesn't matter what side of the aisle it's on. And that State of the Union address was repulsive to me.
Awful.
It was funny, but in the sense of like
it was funny. Oh shit, this is where we're at.
Yeah. And so all the things that we just discussed, just a short list of the problems that are happening in America, I feel like he mocked.
Yeah, and not to, I don't mean to rag on old people, but at the same
Take
time,
it there.
you know what I mean? He messed up that name. He said Lincoln. Instead of Lake, I think her name is Lakey, right?
Yeah.
Lakely, or something. I'm not well versed in all this. I just know that it happened, and it's like, what are we doing here? I know Joe Biden has always had his gaffes, but come on.
I look at both the major candidates, Trump and Biden, have been saying things. They're getting confused with their mixing up words and different officials and different countries. Biden was referring to Gaza and he said Ukraine the other day.
He did the same thing with Libya and Syria.
Yes, and Trump got Nikki Haley and Nancy Pelosi mixed up. He got Obama mixed up with Biden. These are people that are not only out of touch with average Americans, they need to go home and rest. They should not be
retired.
Yes, they should not be running the country.
I think it's elder abuse almost.
And that too, and I mean this in a respectful way. I'm not being ageist. I'm being practical and realistic. If
you're not running a country at 70, 79 years old, I think you're past the age expectancy for an American man at that point. You should be sitting at home, relaxing. Because we all know how stressful the president is. You saw Obama when he went in versus when he came out. Yeah, exactly. It's a stressful job. And let's just give Joe Biden a nice wheelchair.
Yes.
A nice little blanket. And all the ice cream that he wants.
Yep. I was going to say that too.
Let him live the rest of his life. Effectively, it's happening.
Right. I mean, just the whole ice cream eating thing. I've seen him with an ice cream cone taken out to eat ice cream twice already. That is so emblematic, or what's the word? It's the epitome of like what an elderly person should be doing. Getting taken out to eat ice cream, not running a country and making pivotal decisions that affect the whole world, essentially, because this is the American president. So, again, not being ageist, it really comes to practicality. Someone in their middle ages.
It's immoral.
Yes.
And I mean, we've had our run of old white guys, and, Trump, Biden. I think Trump is a little bit more spry than Biden, but still, he's
confused too.
He's old. He's got these policies that they're some of them I would argue are good, and we can have that whole debate. But it's like, get somebody else younger in there. I really like Vivek Ramaswamy. I really like Robert RFK Jr. But is pretty good.
He's saying some interesting things that
he's also
right. Yes. But I also see him as someone that has been around.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I would much rather have him than any of the other two candidates.
Oh, yeah.
Because he actually knows the evils of the government because his two fathers
I like him.
Been killed.
And I think he's
Put it that way.
scared, right? I think he's scaring a lot of people because he's just flippantly saying stuff that people are like, oh no, you shouldn't say that. And
Can't say that out loud.
right. And Dr. Cornel West is someone that I'm really gunning for because he is very seen as radical and he comes at you and he spits the truth. He's been going on so many different networks. And like he was on Piers Morgan the other day, and that surprised me. And he did not back down from
the criticisms and
yes.
stuff, yeah.
And I found that very empowering. Realistically, whether Kennedy or West will get the presidency, realistically,
it's not gonna happen.
However, it is indicative of change and what people's hearts and minds are actually thinking and saying right now. And if we continue, you know, it started with Bernie Sanders. Really, if you know, we've seen this gradual opening up of people opening their minds as to what is possible, and maybe this person will speak for me. And yeah, he's not going to win, and we may be screwed by having Trump or Biden get the presidency, no matter what. In some way, we're going to be screwed, or people, some significant portion of the population is going to feel screwed.
Well, because it's half and half.
Right. So, why don't we take a chance as American citizens and say neither? And even if one of those two gets it, at least we tried, and let's try harder the next time and get again and again until we break through.
Because the Democrat and Republican Party weren't the only ever parties in this country. There was, you know, the Republican Party is only 1864,
yes,
and relatively young to the Democrats at least.
Yes,
but we had the Whigs, the Federalists, and everything else. So it's not impossible to do.
Yes,
and the Libertarian candidate, the party has been around for forever as well. So there are other parties.
Agreed. I think that if we actually sit down and say, what do we want? That's the start. And I think we're getting there because people are getting so fed up and so much is everyone's feeling crunch in some way.
And people got to look at, just to spit off, just to round us off, because we have got music to get to. Yeah. Look at the policies that your candidates are actually advocating for. Don't mark them because they're Democrat or Republican, or because your mother told you to, or because your dad told you to, or because whoever told you to. Look into it yourself, and if they don't have their policies on their campaign page, maybe that's not a good choice.
That part, I couldn't agree more. Yep.
Absolutely. Well, we're gonna get into some more music because that was a long rant.
You know what? It's a big part of what shapes me, and I think that it also helps to explain where a lot of my creativity comes from.
No, it's nice because I don't really talk about politics ever on the show, and I heavily
definitely want to talk to you about it.
Let's get into Get Out.
Oh yes, awesome.
Is this referencing the movie?
Partially, yes. So I've been heckled lately by I don't know what you would call it, people that really don't like what I do, or they think that I'm not authentic, or whatever the case is. I felt the need to address in a way that fit how I wanted to portray a story. And so I felt like I was this black guy in the movie Get Out, dealing with a number of issues that can be masked under social justice issues, but also have to do with a black man under scrutiny.
Let's take a listen.
I'm actually getting ready to shoot the video for this. This song actually means a lot to me because it was like, I don't want to address stuff, but maybe I should. And stepping into it, not being afraid to speak my mind about stuff. So my business you can mind. 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 My game's out, yeah, my game's out, yeah. My game's out, yeah, my game's out, yeah.
No, I don't really typically like talking about politics because it can get so heated. And people get so fucking pissed off for no reason. And it's like, and especially,
I used to.
yeah, I know. But well, especially as like a conservative in the music industry, it's really hard to say anything.
Yeah.
And it's not like I like hate, I don't hate trans people, I don't hate gay people. It's not that kind of conservative. But I'm still like,
that's always what people automatically think of.
Exactly. Especially when I'm saying I'm a Christian, I'm a straight dude. It's like I have all the bad monikers of being like a Christian nationalist Nazi person, and people automatically assume that sometimes.
Yeah.
In fact, now this might have been a stupid decision, but I was accidentally wearing like a Christian shirt at like an LGBT rally, and people came up to me and started beating me up and spitting on me because of it. And thankfully, I had my friends there to yank me out of it and like save me from that. But I was like, I didn't do.
This is why we need to have more conversations and reach across the aisle to people that think differently than us, because a lot of times there's always some kind of common ground.
Yeah.
And over the past 4 years of doing this work, I've come to realize that when I talk about these heated topics, if I don't get so, like, I can be passionate, but I'm not going to look at someone a certain way or demean them or talk down to them. And when you more so just talk about common ground, things we have in common, people are more likely to listen to the things that they don't have in common with you.
No, 100%, and it's like, and that's why I don't like talking about politics, because a lot of these people in this music industry are just so hardline one way or the other, and I find I don't, some people have told me that they would, without knowing what I was, that they would punch me in the face. You know what I mean? I was punching conservative in the face. Like they're talking to me about it. I'm like, okay.
And also, conservative is a broad topic. There's so many different kinds of conservative people that associate with that term, that moniker. That, and even liberal, like liberal conservative. Okay, well, there's so many different kinds of people that think so many different things.
Sure.
You can't judge someone by just a word.
Not one word.
And it's actually something that the urban conservative brings up a lot. It's just like, what does this word mean? Why do you feel this way? Does this word get you upset? This, that, and the third. Because people think that he's like anti-trans, and he actually has a trans kid. And he's never been one to shy away from it. He tries to, everyone grows and changes and understands, grows to understand things that they didn't when they were younger. So he may have been one way when he was younger, and now we're this way today. People have the capacity to open their mind up and change, and even a conservative or liberal has the capacity to go either way. And I think we're so hardline, politicians like, you should have these mindsets and always have them.
You don't vote for me, you're not black.
That part. Exactly. I was just talking about that the other day too. Yes.
Dude, every time that comes, this gap really cracks me up.
That shit makes me cringe. Like,
I know. Well, yeah. It's funny in that aspect. It's
right.
Like, oh my god.
So like this track, you can hear a lot of the remixing throughout it, but I'm still getting my point across with lines of poetry. So like,
so we're gonna cut off here, I think, and kind of wrap it up. So do another person coming in at 4. And that was Get Out. Where can people find you at?
Any music streaming platform or service you use, Spotify, Apple Music, iTunes, Weezer, Deezer, whatever it's called. Weezer. But yeah, anywhere that you listen to music. I have tons of music videos on YouTube as well. I'm on all social media. You can chat with me on Instagram, Facebook. Yeah.
Well, you can find me at quarterroseproductions.com as long as this thing stays up and doesn't get banned or shut down. That's one reason why I don't like getting into politics either, because everyone just wants to censor everything. But you can go find us at quarterroseproductions.com. That's CORYROS productions.com. We have an event coming up this April 21st. That's a Sunday from 5 to 8. We're having it right here at the SRCC in Columbia, PA. We're going to be having our showcase awards again for our second year.
Nice.
And we've got everyone from Cody Tyler Country to Tommy B's indie folk to Liam Galliano's jazz. I'm really excited. It's a true variety show. You guys should come out. If not, we will see you guys next coming Monday with Central Pennsylvania Music Hall of Fame President and Chair Brandon Valentine. With all that said, we'll see you guys later. Bye. Cool.
Awesome sauce, man. It's always a pleasure.
Yeah, man.